Become a sustaining member of the Commonwealth Club for just $10 a month. Join today.
Hello, and welcome. I'm Dr. Ann W. Smith, co-chair of the Commonwealth Club's member-led Arts Forum, and I'm pleased to welcome Commonwealth Club members and everyone else to our program today. Normally we'd be doing this at our beautiful building on the Embarcadero, but we're doing it today like we've done many things this year, virtually. The Arts Forum holds special programming related to the arts in the Bay Area and beyond throughout the year. We are delighted to present this special program, Extraction, Art on the Edge of the Abyss, in partnership with the Codex Foundation, based in Berkeley, California. Fine art printer and publisher Peter Koch is the co-founder of the Codex Foundation and conceived this project about climate change, the arts, and the unsustainable extraction of natural resources taking place now and from now on around the country and the world. Extraction is a multimedia, multi-venue, cross-border art intervention and focus on the suicidal consumption of the planet's natural resources, including, of course, issues related to climate change. Peter Koch's intervention includes a multimedia focus on dual aspects of Northern California and his native state of Montana, and the impact of extraction. The project is culminating in a constellation of nearly 50 overlapping exhibitions, performances, installations, on-site specific work, land art, street art, publications, poetry readings, and cross-media events throughout 2021 and beyond. Extraction is an international art ruckus right now. So I'm very proud to be joined at this meeting by Peter and Sam Peltz, the project coordinator. The Codex Foundation, of which Peter is the director, exists to preserve and promote the contemporary handmade book as a work of art in the broadest possible context and bring to public recognition the artists, the craftsmanship, and the rich history of the civilization of the book. In conjunction with Extraction, Codex is publishing Words on the Edge, a portfolio of poetry in lyric prose and broadside format, with contributions from Margaret Atwood, Peter Coyote, Joe Harjo, Gary Snyder, Robert Haas, Barry Lopez, Kay Ryan, Jan Zwicky, and Kazuaki Tanahashi, among others, each partnered with a different fine press printer. And now for Extraction and the Abyss. I'll first speak with Peter, our internationally renowned master printer, teacher, and artist, who conceived of this global art, and then we'll see and hear from Sam Peltz about the process and current gallery and artists' efforts in putting the 2021 program together. I think Sam has already posted information about Codex and Extraction in the chat room that you can copy down, and you can order a copy of the Extraction catalog. Then Sam is going to talk about this process, and then we should have time for a few questions. And you can post questions and comments in the YouTube chat box throughout, and then towards the end of the program, we'll try to pick up a few of those. So feel free to post questions. Okay. Let's get started, Peter. It's a great idea, born out of anger and frustration, and first shared with Edwin Dobb, who passed away last year, unfortunately, and your willingness to collaborate with your great networks from Montana and California and beyond. What were you and Edwin thinking? What's the ruckus about, really?
Well, is this my moment to
Yes, this is your moment.
Pontificate? Well,
speak to me, pontificate.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Ann. That's a really lovely introduction, and thank you to the Colophon Club, to the Commonwealth Club. I appreciate the opportunity to address you. The idea came slowly to fruition over about a 5-year period, but it began about 5 years ago. In 2018, actually, it physically began when I started making phone calls to museum directors and curators that I knew in Montana. And what I knew, I brought that to their attention. What I brought to their attention was that in 2021, the waters of the Berkeley Pit, that is this giant one of the world's largest Superfund sites, the pit is filled with acid laden and mineral laden and God knows what laden water. And the water is deadly. Birds fly and land on it and die. Anyway, this water has been rising since 1955 in the pit, and it's not been leaving. And in 2021, I knew that that would have been in 3 more years, that water was going to start to flow out of the pit and not into it as much. I mean, as much it was going to flow in, but it was now going to flow out. Now, the water was flowing in at the rate of 1.5 million gallons a day. The water that flowed into the pit was already poisoned by the 10,000 miles of underground mines that were filled with this water before they kind of leaked into the pit. 10,000 miles of underground mining leach. And I knew that in 2021, it was published that water was going to start, acid-laden water was going to enter the watershed at the headwaters of the Columbia River. You know, that great river that we all depend on out here, you know, in the northern part of the West. And it was just going to, well, there was no stopping it. As I understand it, there are now trillions of gallons of this water in there, and they're pumping it out at, I assume today now, because this was the year they had to start pumping it, at the rate of a couple of million gallons a day, because that's how fast it's coming in. And I knew this was coming, and I wanted to sound an alarm amongst the people that I felt had a vital role in the possible future of a world that would not be quite so brutal.
On the website's a dual portrait, the Commonwealth Club website. You asked us to put, and we did, a dual portrait of the Tower of Babel. And is this the pit?
Yeah, that's the pit next to it. Yeah, a pit, of course, you know.
Berkeley Pit, I guess it's called.
It's called the Berkeley Pit, of all places, Butte.
Of all places.
Yeah. You dig a pit and you get a skyscraper. If you've been to Hong Kong and you've seen an endless supply of skyscrapers going off into the absolute distance, just start to think about, well, let's dig a pit for every one of those. So it's a pretty vital image to me that if you build the Tower of Babel, if you dig a pit, you build the Tower of Babel, because what are you going to do with what you take out of the pit? Well, what we've done with it in Butte, of course, is just a total unprecedented disaster. And
that's not just in Butte, that's everywhere.
Yeah.
And And Sam's
Arizona,
going to
New
show us.
Mexico, China, Australia, Chile, Peru.
And it's all connecting now.
Yeah.
Where's the water going?
Well, it's going to the ocean. And guess what? It's going to the ocean. Where all of our waste goes. So it's flowing directly out of where it really goes is it goes to Butte, Montana, on Silverbow Creek, to the Clarks Fork of the Columbia River, down the Clarks Fork to the main branch of the Columbia that comes directly south out of Canada, joins that up in Canada, and then it flows down through Pasco, Washington, and out past the Portland, Oregon, out to Astoria and into the ocean. The former realm, by the way, of some of the greatest salmon fishery in the world, almost.
So you just got on the phone and started, you got mad, got on the phone, started talking to people, and they responded.
Yeah, that's what. Well, I had picked up a book entitled "Black Diamond Dust" in the bookstore at the Dia Beacon Museum in Beacon, New York, and that book was about coal mining on Vancouver Island, and it was artists' response to the basically what coal mining did to the island. And of course, if you start counting up all the things that it did to the island, it brought a lot of immigrants in. It fed a lot of immigrant families. It displaced a lot of native peoples, poisoned a lot of fish, poisoned a lot of everything else. But, the coal was shipped out, and burnt to power whatever it is that they were powering at the time with all of that coal. Anyway, the coal industry left because they ran out of easily mineable coal on Vancouver Island, and this town of Nanaimo was sort of suffering. And I read in that book the story of Butte, Montana, and my hometown, Missoula, and I knew basically in my innermost soul, I suppose you would call it, I knew that the voice of the artist is perhaps one of the most persuasive voices there is. Reason, science, whatever you want to call the other voice, is actually not as persuasive as art. They knew this in the Middle Ages. They know it in many cultures that visual culture is more persuasive. And I thought it was time that our artists, my friends, joined the ruckus.
And they have.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, the whole deterioration process has humanistic impact at the same time that it's having a devastating earthly impact. In other words, people are making a living, coming in. Communities are leaving, learning wonderful live a life that they maybe couldn't have before, but at the same time, they're being displaced. So you have a kind of a confusion all the way through about what the value of mining is. And isn't that an argument that keeps going? Well, it helps the people, it helps the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, we have to have it. There's no good getting away from it as long as we continue to consume. We need what the mines are producing, period. But I think that there's a vision lacking in the way that we're proceeding with the way that we're doing it, and that there are ways of living and doing that could lessen the impact on the on the trout and the salmon and the birds, and that's to me that's the canary in the coal mine, so to speak. If the trout and birds aren't doing well, nothing is going to do well. They're not, and so maybe we should start thinking of ways to live. And I also believe firmly that the visionary people on this planet, need to get fully engaged. And if they have some sense of vision, if they're not fully engaged in the war that we need to wage against the unvisioned, greedy, or whatever you want to call it, needy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, then well, we're totally lost on it. But I think that there's another side to that story, and it needs to be told. And so I thought right from the get-go that to start this ball rolling, to connect the artists one to another, connect the museums and galleries and the street theaters and the music world, connect all these people together with one idea, with one date, and spread it across the planet. This idea grew. I mean, I in the beginning I thought, well, I just want to do Montana. I'll just do Butte and Helena and Missoula, and I'm done. But every time I opened my mouth and told someone I was doing it, they said, I want to join. So, okay, so then I was joined by Edwin Daub. As you mentioned, passed away. Edwin was Mr. Butte. I mean, he knew more about Butte than anybody on earth that I knew of. He'd made movies about it. He'd written about it. He'd written this an unbelievably poignant and philosophical article called "Pennies from Hell" that was published in Harper's Magazine back in the 1980s. And Ed and I are friends, and I've been friends with him since he was a young man, since he was in college. And Ed just came to me and said, "Peter, I want in. I mean, this is my thing." And I said, "Well, Ed, you're in. Go." And he was teaching full-time journalism at long form journalism at UC Berkeley, and he just started to launch these campaign to enjoin all the artists and writers and journalists and photographers that he could find. And Ed took the ball and he really ran. He almost got to the end of the field, but he most unfortunately dropped dead of a heart attack. Only months into this project.
Yeah.
And that's when Sam enters. And whom you all will meet a little later, but you must know from my perspective that Sam was working for Ed and I, but mostly for Ed. When Ed died, Sam stepped up to the plate and took over. And anyway, the magazine, as we call it, the large.
So it's Megazine.
Yeah.
Mega. It's not a typo, folks. It's Megazine.
That's right. It's not a magazine. Okay. It's a magazine. Originally, I thought of this right away because I come from the generation of I don't know, former utopianists who believe in the whole Earth catalog. And I would pore over that thing, back in whenever it was, I can't remember, the far distant past. And I thought, well, we need a whole Earth catalog, a new one. And one that is raising hell, not just trying to create a heaven on earth, because I think we need to raise a lot of hell.
Because people will listen.
On the way.
On the way to heaven, you got to get through hell. Okay.
Right. That's right.
So the point is that the current behavior is unsustainable, but there is sustainable type of behavior, or is that the premise that well, if we backed off some of this unsustainable extraction, if we weren't so greedy, if we weren't so lawless, if we weren't so, a friend of mine, I showed a friend of mine this and she said, "This is awful. This is marvelously awful, all of this." And I thought, yeah, it is marvelously awful. I mean, it's just incredibly awful. And so But you're dealing with a variety of inhabitants. Uh, you've got externality as well as internality. Are you thinking about the present, or do you have to think about the future? People don't like to think about, the next generation. They don't do things according to that. So what can we do? How do we back off? Are the artists suggesting ways for that to happen?
Yeah. And I think that's the exhortation. The exhortation is to invite the artists to have a say so. Bring them into the party. As a dear and wonderful lawyer for the environment said to me not too long ago, he said, we scientists and we lawyers, we failed. We haven't. No one's backing off. And he was in agreement with me in thinking that maybe it's the artist's voice that is missing in the discussion. And so I do think that we have to exhort the artists, visionaries of our societies, to come up with some better ways to live. And one of the most important ways, I think, of doing that is to live exemplary lives. I mean, what is it that created me as an artist and a printer, a bibliophile, a poet, anything that I do, whether I'm good at it or not? Well, what has got me doing it? Well, it's because I looked out into the world and saw people who are doing it already, and I respected what they were doing. In fact, I was usually impressed by what they were doing. Mm-hmm. And if I'm that impressionable, then there must be many, many other people as impressionable, if not more, because I was always told that I was anything but impressionable. I was a troublemaker. I was a leader. I was you're not impressionable. You're just causing trouble. Mm-hmm. Why aren't you just listening to what I have to say? But I am listening. I just don't take it all in, as the gospel. I wanted to transform it. I wanted to give it a new vision, to re-envision it. And I think that that's the job of the artist. If they're any good, and if they're not any good, well, then stick to decorative stuff. Go ahead. Fill our living rooms with beautiful paintings. I mean, I think living rooms and paintings are great, and but if you've got more of a vision than how to put some flowers and a cowboy on a horse in somebody's home, then use it. Use your tools, use your brain, use your vision. That was the whole point of starting this thing.
And have you seen some art that's starting to do that?
Oh, man. We are seeing it every day now. If you were watching Sam's stream on Facebook or wherever else it goes, I'm not too good at all the media. I think it's incredible. It's incredible, the amount of work. Sam may tell you a little bit about his going. He put 7,000 miles on his car this summer going to exhibitions.
Wow.
All around the American West, starting in Iowa and all the way out to San Francisco and back. And I've been to the exhibitions in Walla Walla, the Maya Lin exhibition. I've been to the Museum of Missoula Museum of Art 4 exhibitions, some of the most powerful exhibitions I've ever laid eyes on. And I'm not just being super prejudiced here. I mean, I'm listening to people tell me, what they see, and they're telling me that these exhibitions are beautiful, and it's a terrible beauty, as you just mentioned. It is a terrible beauty, but we have to face it. I mean, we can't live like ostriches. You put your head under the ground, man, you're going to die.
Mm-hmm. So that watching this, it might lead people to conclude and say, well, maybe I really don't need to make that much money.
Yeah. Or I don't need to get on that airplane. Why? I mean, maybe you really don't need to go to, to New York next week for that opening. Maybe you just don't need to spend all that stuff. Maybe you don't need all those plastic bottles. Maybe you can drink the water that comes out of your faucet instead of the ones that comes out of the, with the billions of plastic bottles that are made per day. I don't know. I'm not exemplary. I mean, I'm sitting here with a bottle of Pellegrino next to me, because I can. But
yes, it tastes good.
but I'd like to say that there's excess, and I think that we should all aim for it. And I think the best way to do it is to be occupied doing things, that are sustainable things to do. I mean, grow a garden, keep some bees, take care of your pets, and entertain your children. Don't turn on the television. There are many things that we can do that will make our lives, happier, fuller, more beautiful, and at the very same time, without really going out of our way, we would be saving some of this terrible waste that we're experiencing. I mean, during the worst part of the pandemic, when we were really shut down, I'm afraid that I'd never seen such clean air.
Mm-hmm. And quiet.
Yeah, almost refreshing, frightening.
Yeah. Quiet. Well, that maybe the point is, I think you mentioned Lucy Lippard, who was a professor, I think, at San Francisco State and a local author and political writer about, of course, art cannot change the world alone, but it is a worthy ally to challenging power.
You're quoting Lucy Lippard, right?
Yeah.
Well, she's like a prophetess.
Uh-huh.
She's like going to the oracle. I mean, Lucy was, she's amazing, the things that she's said and done in her lifetime.
I remembering her from the 80s in influencing the art world as it was going through the evolving into more environmental considerations. Mm-hmm. And she was one of the people who write these things. And there's this really nice preview book.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Like trainer's work. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is, to me, it summarizes beautifully a lot of what's going on that I think we'll hopefully get into. And maybe as we call Sam into this, we can look ahead to what's going on with this project. So we have to be hopeful. You don't do this unless you're hopeful.
Oh yeah, and there are places and there are things yet to be done. I mean, we have the mining extraction exhibitions, of which there are 4 in the museum in Missoula right now. They could be taken down in October, and you could just start with, then move right to timber. I mean, mines eat timber like a horse eats a bucket of grain. I mean, that's just it. I mean, you have to build your railroad. You have to build anyway. So what are we going to do about the trees? And then what are we going to do about the salmon? So there's a lot of work to do, and it could be joyful. It could be more than joyful. It could be productive. And I think that because there's a lot of work to do, and because there is a war to be enjoined, those of you or us that have more of a warrior-like spirit than shall we say a complete I don't know what, uber pacifist, that there's a good war to be joined, and I think that and I think that our corporate mining structures and our corporate food structures and our corporate agriculture structures, that they all have to be re-envisioned. They have to be in fact, they need to be replaced. But I'm not going to talk about revolution or anything like that, because God, I don't want to have anything to do with that. I'm from Montana. I'm not into revolution. I'm into change.
You're into good trouble.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about this project, I look at that, I couldn't help but think of, John Lewis's charge of, it's not necessarily revolution, it's good trouble you're leading to, or that you're talking about. And that's what makes things overall it makes the world feel a little bit better, and be a little bit better. And all we can do is a little bit at a time. But getting the extraction done was done a little bit. It took a little bit at a time to dig that hole. So to fill it in, we can't do it all in one dump, can we? As it were.
No, not
One
at all.
thing at a time.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's time to check in with. Come back, Sam.
Hello.
Hi. Well. Now, Sam did all the work about the trying to go about this process of getting the artists and the current galleries and the efforts in getting this program together. Now, it's going to go on. Yes, it will. It will
Yeah.
continue. And I think Sam, maybe you could talk about I'm sure it's been an amazing experience and coordinating all this. Can you talk about some of the standout experiences? And can you talk about, some of those as you share? Can you share some visuals with this? I think it'd be great for me to stop talking and for us to have a look and you to talk about. Well, here's what we're talking about. Here go the arts.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, let me just pull up my video
Okay,
real quick here.
loading.
Okay, great. So yeah, thank you so much for that amazing intro, and thanks Peter for everything as well. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about my experience over the summer, kind of like not only coordinating these exhibitions, but also getting the amazing opportunity and privilege really to get to visit a few of them in person. So we've co-organized, with all of these different venues. At last count, it's actually over 60 different exhibitions all over the country, and there's even some abroad as well. And this map, could be updated yet again still because people are coming into the project kind of faster than I'm able to keep up with it. Um,
Can you tell us what the map's about for
oh,
people who will
sure.
be listening later?
Yeah, so this is basically, it's a big map of the United States, and it's got all these dots of pinpoints basically of where the different exhibitions are. And this is something that Ed and Peter did with a real road map that they use to kind of get themselves excited about everything. And I kind of just turned it into something for the website here, and I've been trying to update it as we go along. But it's also printed in our magazine that you were talking about before. This is our kind of major publication. It's 648 pages, kind of inspired by the Whole Earth catalog. And so this was my route over the summer. Getting to kind of visit as many of these exhibitions as I could. The project has over 60 exhibitions, but there's about 20 that kind of happen at the same time. So there's all these overlapping events that are happening all at once, and I was able to go to over a dozen of them, but I still basically only scratched the surface. But one of the highlights of that trip for me was the Missoula Art Museum, which you and Peter discussed a little bit briefly earlier. And so this was an exhibition that was curated by Brandon Reincheese and Laura Millen of the Missoula Art Museum. And Peter's work is featured in it, but it's called Edge of the Abyss, Artists Picturing the Berkeley Pit. So this is kind of the one sort of exhibition that was explicitly about the Berkeley Pit. And so here's some images from an artist talk that we were able to give. Here's Laura, who's introducing us here, and we got to speak about kind of the origins of the project, talking a little bit like we're doing with you today. Here's Peter's work from that show. And so this piece kind of relates back to some of the original mine tunnels, the 10,000 miles of mines under the city of Butte. There was a horrible accident where over 140 miners were killed, and so this piece actually commemorates that, and I think a really sort of sardonic but sort of captivating way. These are some other pieces from that same exhibition. This is a little bit of a before and after sort of imagery here by a painter named Gene Arnold. So as we were discussing, the pit has filled up with water over the past 30 or so years, and at this point they're actually able to treat the water that's coming out of the pit as well. So they're it's not like it's going straight into the Columbia River anymore. They've kind of come up with these ways of treating the water to make it palatable But it's still, it's something that future generations are going to have to deal with in perpetuity, which I think is sort of the symbol of not just the Berkeley pit, but a lot of the issues that we're talking about here, whether it's climate change or anything else. It's this idea of leaving these disasters to future generations, and basically they have no choice but to just deal with it for forever, basically. Here is another image from that same show. This is the Speculator mine, which is one of the earlier mines as well. So that they did the old underground style of mining until 1955 or something, around that time, and then that's when they started to construct the open pit, which is a safer method of mining for the workers. But of course, it unlike underground mining, it entails the complete and total destruction of the ecosystem. So I'll just kind of flip through these a little bit quickly here. This is Marcy James. One of the fascinating things about this show for me was, I was surprised to see these images in person and realize that a lot of these photographs and paintings are actually done on metal supports, which I thought was very interesting because, obviously they're using extracted material, whether it's copper or some other mined material as the actual support for the artwork. This is a photo by Ian Van Coller. His work actually was in a separate exhibition in Kalispell, Montana, that was about melting glaciers. So a lot of the exhibitions, whether in Montana or elsewhere in the nation, kind of deal with whatever issues are local, whatever types of environmental problems each community is facing. Another pit image. This is a different open pit mine. This is a photo by Michael Light. This is the Bingham mine in Utah, which is actually the deepest man-made excavation on Earth. And here's another image of that same mine by a painter named Erica Osborne, who's actually the curator of another exhibition that's taking place in Colorado in Fort Collins. There's an exhibition ongoing right now called Reclamation, and that's a really fantastic show that I also was fortunate to see in my time there. This is David Maisel, another mine here, and
this is in Nevada.
This one is in this is in Nevada. Yeah, this is in Carlin, Nevada. And then this one I think is this is by Larry Geip. This is a painting as well, which is also featured in our catalog. So moving on from there, there's another exhibition at the Holter Museum of Art in Helena that deals with a lot of different environmental problems in different locations in Montana. So there's a lot of images of mines here, but we're also talking about kind of this very broad range of different environmental problems that people face. So this left image is an aerial photograph of a salmon farm, which I think is powerful. A lot of these extractive processes, I think a lot of people don't necessarily know what they look like. Actually visually, it's you just buy the salmon from the supermarket. You don't necessarily think about what does it look like to farm salmon. Here's some of Peter's work that's in that show. I wanted to talk a little bit about some exhibitions that are a little bit closer to home if you're in the Bay Area. This is in San Francisco. This is at the San Francisco Public Library. There is a joint exhibition co-hosted by the San Francisco Center for the Book and the San Francisco Public Library. And that exhibition is also called Reclamation, actually. But it features a lot of book art, fine art bookmakers and printers that are frequent participants in the Codex Foundation in our biennial book fair. but also just just brilliant printers and bookmakers. So this is an exhibition that you can actually go see if you're in the San Francisco Bay Area. And here's a few shots of the books that are on display there. And then finally, I wanted to talk about this really cool, I don't know, you'd call it almost like a virtual, not a virtual reality, but an augmented reality installation. This is a project put together by the Berkeley Futures History Lab, which is a course at UC Berkeley. And it's called Monument to Extraction. It takes place at the Albany Bulb landfill, which, if you're unfamiliar with this place, it's basically a man-made strip of land that was used as an industrial waste landfill. It juts out into the San Francisco Bay from the town of Albany. So you can, if you go there, they've ceased using it as a landfill at this point, and it's actually a public park. So you go there early in the morning, and there's a lot of dog walkers and people out with their coffee. But basically, artists use this place as as kind of a place to do street art and a lot of different projects. But they've put together this amazing tour that you can download from Spotify. It's an audio walking tour. They also have an app that you can download that has an augmented reality feature. So you basically like line yourself up with whatever the installation is that you're looking at, and the tour will tell you what to do, and it'll play these videos for you, and just kind of it gives you this very complete and powerful look at the history of extractive industry in the San Francisco Bay. Whether it's the dynamite factories that Chinese workers were exploited in, or the history of redlining and race, and how that intersects with the extractive industries when neighborhoods were being built. There's all these bricks and steel slag everywhere, and it kind of like covers all of these fascinating things that you wouldn't necessarily think about unless you knew what you were looking at, which I thought was really powerful.
And what's it now? It's called Monument to Extraction?
Yeah, it's at the Albany Bulb landfill, and it's called Monument to Extraction. It's a public art installation, so it's basically on view until it disappears, until somebody paints over it. So you're welcome to go check it out for as long as it's really kind of memorable moments for me while visiting some of these exhibitions. Something like this really kind of like touched me in a deep way.
And you can just walk around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it'll tell you where to start, and then they'll have things marked off. It'll say there should be a blue stone marked 20 feet to your left. Go to that stone, and then it's really kind of fun actually to kind of follow the directions. But yeah, I didn't have any trouble following it for sure.
Is it a website?
Yeah, there's a website. I believe it's just monumenttoextraction.org. But I think that's, we can double check that maybe.
Okay.
And then, okay, sorry, I've got one more.
Yeah, no, take your time. We got time.
There's a show at the Museum of Contemporary Native Arts in Santa Fe, and this show is it's an exhibition that's curated by 5 different international indigenous curators. Excuse me. But this exhibition deals specifically with the legacy of nuclear testing and uranium extraction, both in the U.S. and abroad. So I think the different locations include Australia, where a lot of the British nuclear tests were taking place, as well as the Marshall Islands and Japan. And then, of course, the Navajo Nation is one of the places where a lot of the uranium that is used in nuclear power is extracted from. So there's actually over 1,000 uranium mill sites in the borders within the borders of the Navajo Nation. And this is a piece of this is some aerial photography by a Navajo artist named Will Wilson. So this is a disposal cell for uranium. And so this exhibition is ongoing now as well. And I think it's just a really fascinating look at how, it's called Exposure, Native Art and Political Ecology. And it really deals with a lot of issues that are afflicting indigenous peoples kind of all over the world, but specifically relating to the legacy of nuclear accidents and nuclear waste and exposure to radioactive material. So yeah, that's the presentation. Yeah, so that's the magazine. It's 648 pages, full color. And if you've seen one in person, it's kind of like a phone book. It's printed on newsprint, so it's pretty lightweight material. And it's just chock full of a bunch of images and poetry and philosophical writing, essays by curators and artists and anyone we could round up for it, basically.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to ask Sam a question, if I could.
You bet. Ask him all you like. We got time.
Okay. Well, Sam, I wanted to ask you a kind of a more of an overall question. You completed a 7,000-mile journey and visited an enormous number of these exhibitions out here in the American West. Did you come away with any kind of feeling of unity, or was it all just sort of everything was just separated? And
no, yeah, I definitely did. I think pretty much, well, and especially having had the experience of like having pretty much a similar conversation with every person that we came into contact with. It's amazing the extent to which there's agreement, at least among the artists, about the strategies that we should employ, and the importance of kind of bearing witness to extractive industry and ecological injustice. I felt like we were all just kind of birds of a feather, and it might also be partly due to the fact that a lot of the artists that we know each other as well, and I think those connections have only been strengthened by the project. But yeah, there definitely felt like it really felt like we were all in it together.
Can I think about what's ahead?
Yeah, that's important. Yeah, go ahead, Sam. What are you?
Oh, I was just going to ask if you had the same sense of that.
Well, listen, Sam. I wanted to turn that part over to you because I'm coming to an end here, meaning that in about a year's time, I will have accomplished what I set out to do. But what we have done together, you and I and Ed and every other participant from the people in each exhibition, we still have, the work is not finished. And what I think that the plea would be, or that the vision would be, that we would continue, and how and why, and not why, what is the best way to continue? Is it more forums like this one, or is it that plus more publications? Is it that plus more exhibitions? I mean, I'm up for the ruckus never stopping.
Yeah.
It's like an eternal war. I mean, you think of the problems that the indigenous nations encountered once they've been colonized. These things don't go away. The problems that the Flathead Indians and the people in Australia and the people in Siberia, the old populations, they're still here and they're still fighting. And I think that there's a white man's fight just as well as there's every other color.
Yes.
And that if we just use the tools we have, and if your tools are a herd of reindeer, keep them moving. Fight for the rights to keep the reindeer on the ground. Fight for the rights to. So I think that our I think we need to. If you remember, the Whole Earth catalog had like 5 or 6 different iterations and volumes. I mean, I'd
I
like
have
to see
one
this
somewhere.
keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I certainly agree.
long
I think
now.
there's a hunger for it. And I think,
Yeah.
it's a conversation that should be had by, everybody who's participated in the project so far. But from all the people that I've talked to, I think there's definitely a hunger for it to keep going. And for, I feel like, we've just kind of started with we've just gotten our momentum basically. So I think we should definitely try to keep it going in some way or another.
Do you know, or are there other groups doing this east of Iowa?
Oh
What's
yeah,
happening?
definitely. Yeah, there's a pretty good sized handful of shows happening on the East Coast as well. There's one that opens this week at Connecticut College in New London, Connecticut. That show is called Fire and Ice, and it's I think dealing more explicitly with climate change issues and melting glaciers and fossil fuel extraction. So that's one that I'm definitely excited about as well.
But is it all under the same rubric, or what? I mean,
Yeah.
what do you think is going to? The point is, going forward, what is coming up as having an impact? Should we just focus on a couple of things in the United States, or they do something in another one, or we do everything all at once? How can it happen?
Yeah, I don't think that the range
There's
of
one
issues
generation to
should be
the
focused on-
next.
Yeah, I don't think that the range of issues should be narrow. I think it should be broad. I think that's kind of one of the strengths of the project, the fact that, no single artist or, even small group of artists, artist collective or something has the bandwidth to address all of the issues that need to be addressed. Because this project is so this problem is so enormous. And there's all these different facets to it that need to be addressed. And as for whether it should all happen at once or be more dispersed, I think that's something that people can talk about and sort of discuss the best way forward. But I certainly think we should. The idea is extraction being sort of like up the pipe from climate change. Like climate change is a symptom of this obsessive need for humans to take things out of the earth and burn them.
Yeah, climate change is really it's like that's like a symptom. The cause of the disease is something else, right? It's deeper underground, if you wish, or underwater, or inside a tree. And if we want to talk about the future, I have to tell you this story, really short. Do we have a second?
Yes, we're fine. We have about 5 more minutes or so.
Okay, we're out walking our neighborhood, and I just happened to get into conversation with this young woman who was standing outside her home, and I didn't know. Anyway, this young girl is 16 years old. She's a junior in high school, and she's already started her own extraction art group. She had already started it before I even told her about extraction art. I started talking to this young lady, and she said, "Oh my God, I got to know about it." So the next day, I dropped a copy of our catalog off in their mailbox because they're just neighbors. I don't really know them. And she started to communicate with me. She says she wants to create her own ruckus. Okay, here's the 16-year-old girl that already started a network, based on whatever her media, social media, I suppose. And she's a high school student at Berkeley High School. And I think that we need to get this into, my God, I mean, we need to get these ideas and these catalogs in the hands of the young people, because they're the ones with who have the most to gain.
Yeah. It's a high school.
Yeah, we
It's
should,
perfect.
we should shout out to her project. If you want to support her project, it's called One Blue Earth.
One Blue Earth.
Exactly.
Nice.
And this is something. The form this is taking. It's actually. This is a present for Peter.
Oh, nice. Oh, cool. Yeah.
Have you seen this?
Yeah. Extractor. Oh
It's
my
a
God.
game
Yeah.
from Australia.
Oh man, they know about it over there, don't they?
Yeah.
And they have
And-
basically given the country to the mining interests. It's yours, buddy. It's all
Yeah.
yours.
You're gonna run out of water soon.
Mm.
And this one is about the interconnections between hollowing out materials of the earth and the biosphere, and the data capture of human practices of communication and sociality. And this is published by the Museum of Old and New Art in Australia. I think it's Tasmania, next to Australia. Simon Denny is the name. And it's quite a game. It's a dystopian board game. Sure.
Perfect.
Sure, a great game for our times. So
Yeah.
I'll bring it to Peter the next time I see him. And I think, you touched upon the 16-year-olds. Well, what was that girl from Sweden, Greta Thun? And she decided she'd set the world on fire with her ideas, and she refused to let the quote grown-ups get away with anything. And said, okay, you did it. You have to listen to us. So let's get those 16-year-olds going.
And the 16-year-olds that belong to the families that own the mines.
Yes.
Maybe the Freeport McMoran Corporation, maybe they have children, those owners of those corporations. Maybe those youngsters should jump on board.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Let's get them. It's all about you, folks.
Line 'em up.
It's all about the next generation. Well, Sam, so are you gonna go on another road trip?
Yeah, I don't know if I have kind of the bandwidth for it at the moment, but
It was really impactful, huh?
There's something that may or may not happen still in Missoula. We were gonna have a musical performance that we may be traveling to, and who knows, maybe I'll see some ways to get out to the East Coast as well and see a couple shows out there as well. But the important thing is that they're happening. So yeah, somebody's going to go to them, and that's what's
good.
Important.
Tell the governor, our governor.
Yeah, we should.
He likes this stuff. And keep the Commonwealth Club informed. We have a Climate One forum that might be interested in expanding on what we were talking about today. So I think that we don't seem to have any questions at the moment. For those who are watching, the information about getting the magazine is on the chat. And so I will, if we don't have any other comments at this time, Peter, any closing words from you for today?
Well, I would certainly like to always leave with a prayer and exhortation. I haven't prepared anything, however, so I think that it should be easy enough to follow up on what we're doing, and by following the website, staying in touch with Sam and I through our website, and if you can, please contribute a little something to our efforts, because at least we know that we will exist as long as you are interested.
Exactly. And that's Codex, CODEX Foundation.org.
Yeah, and codexfo.org.
Yep, easy to find. So thank you, Peter Koch. Thank you, Sam Peltz. of the Codex Foundation, for joining us at this meeting about extraction, art on the edge of the abyss. I'm Dr. N.W. Smith for the Commonwealth Club Member-Led Arts Forum, and we look forward to you joining us again during the Commonwealth Club's 118th year of enlightened public discussion. So this meeting is adjourned.